What's up, everybody? Matt Modi here with Jedi Modi Sports Network, and I'm here to give you a betting preview of Thursday night football between the Commanders versus the Bears. It's going to be a very gross football game, and I'm here to talk you through what we have going on with the matchups. So, real quick, before we can get into Thursday's games, I've gotten a lot of flack because I didn't do this in Monday's video. So, I'm here to give you a recap of how my NFL bets have done. The reason why I'm doing this is to show that I'm not hiding from it. It's been really, really rough. As you can see here, my straight up picks against the spread 2 and 3 is what I went in week 4. For my underdog picks, I gave out 4. I went 1 and 3 on those. End up bringing that to a loss as well. But the real kicker here, the real struggle is on these player props. I started solely doing anytime touchdowns. That didn't work for week 4. I gave out straight up player props. That went even worse, going 0 and 6. So here are my NFL stats. If you guys don't want to ride with me, I would totally understand. I'm very confident that we're going to be able to turn this around. Baseball season was very profitable. NBA season prior to that was very profitable. It's been a horrendous start, but I'm confident that we're going to turn this around. If you are sticking with me, if you're still watching, I appreciate you. Make sure to click that like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. All that stuff helps me out a ton if you are still a fan. And let's chat Thursday night football. So starting off, I'm going to have 3 picks for you guys in this game. I'm going to have 1 play on the main line, which I've actually already talked about. So if you've already heard me talk about this game on my previous video, I apologize. I'm going to go through it again. And I have 2 player props as well. Those are going to be brand new. But to set the stage, the Bears 0-4 coming off of a pretty brutal blown lead against the Broncos. They're up 28-7, allowed the Broncos to score 24 straight points, lost 31-28. Bears are a complete and utter dumpster fire. Just horrible things going on with that franchise. Rudderless, has no hope. They need to clean house. We'll see what happens from there. On the Commanders side, they've now lost 2 straight after a 2-0 start, but when you lose to the Bills and to the Eagles in back-to-back games, it's not something to be concerned about. I actually am high on this Commanders team. I think Sam Howell has a chance to not be great, but be pretty good, which is something that the Commanders haven't had basically since Kirk Cousins. And I do find it hilarious that the Commanders are playing in a game where they are not the biggest dumpster fire organization in that game. When's the last time the Commanders could have said that? So things might be looking up in Washington. Unsurprisingly, they're very, very heavy favorites here. On the money line, best odds you can get them at are on Sport Trade at minus 256. If you are in favor of the Bears winning straight up, you can get them at plus 240. That's at Caesars and at FanDuel. What I find more interesting is the spread, where pretty much across the board, the Commanders are 6.5 point favorites. There's really no line movement. There hasn't been any differences in the sports books. It's always been at 6.5. If you are like me and you are located in Colorado or New Jersey, you can get them at Sport Trade at minus 104 at 6.5. If you are not in Colorado or New Jersey, you can get them at DraftKings. I will say, if you're in one of those 2 states, Colorado, New Jersey, highly recommend downloading Sport Trade. They consistently have the best odds, really no matter what game you're looking at, what sport you're looking at. And then for the Bears, funny enough, the Sport Trade also has the best odds on the Bears at minus 106. If you're not in Colorado or New Jersey, minus 110 pretty much across the board. The over-under is at 44.5, but I don't have a play on the total. I do have a play on the spread, and I'm on the Commanders. It's a 1-unit play on the Commanders, minus 6.5, depending where you can get them. Again, I say Sport Trade has the best odds in my state. If you're not in Sport Trade, DraftKings at minus 108. As I mentioned, a rare game in which the Commanders are not the biggest dumpster fire. That would be the Bears. And I think this is a great opportunity to buy the Commanders after losing 2 straight. I think they're a legitimately good team with good skill positions on offense. They got talent along the defensive line on defense. Obviously, their offensive line does have a little bit of work to do, but playing against the Bears, that's not going to be an issue. The Bears, overall, the worst or second worst team in the NFL, depending on where you look. DVOA has them as the worst team with the second worst defense in the NFL. They have the second worst passing defense, and they have the 10th worst rushing defense. They're just a horrible team. Justin Fields has been brutal as well. And despite having a good game against the Broncos, we've learned that the Broncos defense is terrible. So I'm not necessarily buying that Fields is going to have a good game. And I'm ready for this to be a bounce back game for the Commanders. Bounce back is a little bit loose because they played the Eagles tough. They scored 31 points on the Eagles, who had the 10th best defense in the NFL. The Eagles also had the #1 rushing defense in the NFL. So if you're looking at this game and you're ready to buy on Brian Robinson, I agree with you, and we're going to get into him. But on the main lines here, my only play is the Commanders -6.5. Moving on to my player props, where I mentioned I have two for you guys, and they're connected, so I'm going to talk about them together. But the two plays are Brian Robinson anytime touchdown. This is at +110 odds at Barstool. I also like Brian Robinson to go over his rushing yardage total at over 63.5. This is at -115 odds at BetMGM. I love Brian Robinson in this matchup. He's my favorite player to target in this matchup. I just like the fact that he gets consistent work, regardless of the game script and how things are going for the Commanders. Brian Robinson gets work, and he even gets a little bit of passing work as well. But to talk about his work specifically on the ground, through 4 games, he has 19, 18, 10, and 14 carries. Never over 20, never under 10, which is good. In the game that he only had 10 carries, he still had 70 rushing yards, and that was against the Bills. Now, last week against the Eagles, he did not have a great game. He went under this rushing yardage total, but as I mentioned, the Eagles have the literal #1 rushing defense in the NFL, according to DVOA. If you just want to look at raw stats like rushing yards per game or yards per carry allowed, they're top 5 in those two categories as well. They allow the 5th lowest yards per carry in the NFL. Meanwhile, talking about the Bears, as I mentioned, the 2nd worst defense in the entire NFL. I'm expecting the Commanders to have a ton of success. I'm also expecting them to be winning this game pretty much from the jump. So if that happens, they're probably going to give Brian Robinson even more of the workload. There has yet to be a game through 4 games for the Commanders where they were winning the majority of the game. Even against the Cardinals in week 1, they needed to come back. Against the Broncos, they needed to come back. And then against the Bills, they were down that whole game. The Eagles was a little bit more of a back and forth, but they knew they had to keep scoring. So they never had a game where they could just sit on it, which I think they'll be able to do in this one. Overall, Brian Robinson has gone over this in 2 of 4 games. I like him to go over it once again. This specifically is rushing yardage again for Thursday Night Football. I also like him to score, as I mentioned, in terms of anytime touchdowns. He scored in 3 of 4 games so far this year. The only game in which he didn't score was against the Bills, a game in which the Commanders didn't score an offensive touchdown at all. That's not going to happen against the Bears. I also like the fact that along with his consistent workload, he also gets the majority of the work in the red zone as well. He leads the team by far in red zone carries. He also has a red zone receiving touchdown as well. Not that he's great in the passing game, but at least he's getting some work. So overall, I'm all over the Commanders in this one. Commanders -6.5. Brian Robinson anytime touchdown. Brian Robinson over 63.5 rushing yards. Hopefully we can turn things around. We can go 3-0 in this game. If you're riding with me, again, make sure to comment and let me know. Other than that, like, subscribe, comment, as I mentioned, all that good stuff helps me out a ton. Appreciate everybody for watching, and have a good one.